I never thought the proudest moment of my life would become the catalyst for losing everything I'd worked for. But that's exactly what happened the day I overheard my son talking about me in a way that shattered not just my heart, but the entire foundation of trust I'd built my life upon. My name is David, and for 32 years I poured concrete. Not metaphorically, literally. I was a construction worker, the kind who wakes up at 4:30 in the morning when it's still dark, makes coffee in a thermos that's older than some of my coworkers, and drives to job sites where the work is hard. The pay is modest, and the respect is, well, let's just say people don't write songs about concrete layers. But I never complained. Not once. Because every single day, every aching muscle, every blister, every time I came home covered in dust and cement, it was all for him. For Marcus, my son, my only child. The reason I existed. Marcus was brilliant. I'm not saying that because I'm his father. I'm saying it because it was objectively true. From the time he was 5 years old, he could solve math problems that made my head spin. His teachers called us in for meetings not because he was in trouble, but because they were amazed. Gifted, they said. Exceptional. The kind of kid who comes along once in a generation. His mother, Linda, died when Marcus was 7. Cancer. It was brutal, and it was fast. And suddenly I was a single father trying to raise a genius while working 60-hour weeks. I didn't have family nearby. No safety net. Just me, my boy, and a determination that he would never, ever have to struggle the way I did. I made him a promise at Linda's funeral, standing there in my only suit while he clung to my leg. I whispered it so only he could hear. I'm going to give you every opportunity I never had. You're going to do something amazing with your life, and nothing's going to stand in your way. And I kept that promise. God, did I keep it. I worked doubles, weekends, holidays, while other guys were watching football or taking vacations. I was on job sites making time and a half, banking every extra dollar. I lived in the same small apartment for 20 years. I drove a truck that was already old when I bought it and became ancient under my care. I wore clothes until they literally fell apart. I ate the same cheap meals on rotation. Rice, beans, chicken when it was on sale. I calculated every expense down to the penny. But Marcus had tutors. Marcus had a computer when all his friends were still sharing family desktops. Marcus went to science camps and math competitions. When he got accepted to Stanford, on a partial scholarship, I didn't hesitate. I liquidated everything. My retirement account. The small savings I'd managed to build. I even took out a second mortgage on the tiny house. I'd finally managed to buy $173,000. That's what I spent on 4 years of Stanford. Room, board, tuition, books, a decent laptop, and enough money so he could focus on studying instead of working some campus job that would distract him from his education. I ate ramen so he could eat in the dining hall. I patched my work boots with duct tape so he could have proper shoes for internship interviews. I ignored the pain in my back and knees so he wouldn't have to worry about anything except becoming the success I knew he could be, and he did it. He graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science. Within 2 months, he had a job offer at a major tech company in Seattle. Starting salary, $120,000 a year. More money than I'd made in any 3 years of my life combined. I cried when he told me. Actual tears streaming down my face while we talked on the phone. You did it, son, I said. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Dad, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I couldn't have done it without you. Those words. I replayed them in my head for weeks. They sustained me through the backaches and the early mornings and the knowledge that I'd probably be working until the day I died because there was nothing left for retirement. But it was worth it. It was all worth it. 6 months after Marcus started his job, he invited me to visit him in Seattle. I was nervous. I'd never been on a plane before, never been to the Pacific Northwest, never seen the kind of life he was living now. But he insisted, and he even paid for my ticket. His apartment was in a beautiful building with a doorman and everything. Floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sleek furniture that probably cost more than my truck. He gave me a tour, and I tried not to let my amazement show too obviously. I didn't want to embarrass him. That first night, he took me out to dinner at a fancy restaurant. The kind with small portions and prices that made my palms sweat, but Marcus just waved it off. My treat, Dad. You deserve it. We talked about his job, his life, his plans. He was dating someone, a woman named Jessica who worked in marketing. He was getting promoted. Everything was falling into place. I'm thinking about buying a place, he said. The market's crazy here, but I've been saving, and with my salary increase, I could probably swing a down payment. My heart swelled. That's wonderful, son. Really. You've worked so hard, Willie said, looking a little uncomfortable. I was actually hoping we could talk about that. I leaned forward, ready to help however I could. Maybe he needed advice, or wanted to talk through the numbers. Of course, anything the thing is. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I've been looking at places, and to really get something good, I'd need about $40,000 for a down payment. I've got 30 saved, but I'm short. And I was wondering if... I know you've already done so much, but... He trailed off, and suddenly I understood. He needed money. More money. My stomach dropped. Marcus, I don't have that kind of money. I spent everything on your education. I'm still paying off the second mortgage. His expression shifted. Just slightly, but I saw it. Disappointment. Maybe even irritation. Right, he said. Of course. I just thought... you've always said that investing in my future was the most important thing. It is, I said quickly. But son, I literally have nothing left. I'm 56 years old and I have maybe $4,000 in savings. My retirement fund is empty. I'm probably going to have to work until I'm 70 just to keep my head above water. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I get it. Don't worry about it. I'll figure something out. But something had changed. I felt it the next day. He said he had to go into the office for a few hours. Make yourself at home, he told me. There's food in the fridge, and the Wi-Fi password is on the counter. I spent the morning walking around his neighborhood, marveling at the clean streets and the coffee shops and the bookstores. When I got back to his apartment around noon, I heard voices. Marcus was home and he wasn't alone. I could hear him talking to someone in the living room. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name. I love my dad, but sometimes I just... Marcus's voice was frustrated. He doesn't get it. Get what? Another male voice, young, probably a coworker or friend. Like I asked him to help with the down payment, and he gave me this whole sob story about being broke. Which, okay, I get that he spent money on my education. But that was his choice, you know? I didn't ask him to drain his entire life savings. That was his decision. My hand froze on the doorknob. Honestly, Marcus continued, it's kind of frustrating because now he uses it as this guilt trip. Like I'm supposed to feel grateful forever because he chose to be financially irresponsible. Dude, that's harsh, the friend said, but he was laughing a little. I'm serious, though. He acts like he's this martyr, but whose fault is it that he has no retirement? He made bad choices. He should have been smarter with his money, instead of throwing it all at me. I would have figured something out. I could have taken more loans, worked during school. He didn't have to do all that. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. And now, he's here, staying in my apartment. And it's like, I feel like he expects something from me. Like I owe him. And maybe I do technically, but it's suffocating, you know? I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask him to sacrifice everything. That was his choice. And now I'm supposed to carry that weight? So what are you going to do? The friend asked. Marcus sighed. I don't know. I'll probably send him some money here and there once I buy the condo. Keep him happy. But I'm not about to derail my life because my dad made poor financial decisions. I've got my own future to think about. I stood there in the hallway. Groceries in hand, I'd stopped to buy ingredients to cook him dinner. I felt something inside me crack. This was the child I'd given everything for. The boy I'd raised, protected, sacrificed for. And to him I was just... What? A financial burden? A guilt trip. Someone making poor choices by loving him too much. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I just set the groceries in the kitchen, made an excuse about not feeling well, and spent the rest of the visit in the guest room. I flew home 2 days early. Marcus called a few times over the next week, but I didn't know what to say to him. How do you talk to someone when you've heard their real opinion of you? When you know that everything you thought your relationship was built on was just an illusion? I fell into a depression. Dark, heavy, suffocating. I kept going to work because I had to, but I felt hollow, empty. What had it all been for? Then, one night I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, when something shifted in me. I wasn't angry at Marcus for being ungrateful. Ungrateful kids exist. I was angry at myself, because I'd spent 32 years building my entire identity around being his father, his provider, his supporter. I'd erased myself completely. In doing so, I'd taught him that my life had no value except in service to his. Of course he didn't respect my sacrifice. I'd never respected myself enough to maintain any boundaries, any sense of self-worth beyond what I could give him. I'd built a monument to parental sacrifice and wondered why it felt like a tomb. So I made a decision. Not out of revenge, exactly, but out of something more profound. Self-reclamation. I sat down and I did something I should have done years ago. I made a plan for my life. Right. Not for Marcus's life. Not for the son who thought I'd made poor financial decisions by loving him. For me, first I called a financial advisor. Free consultation. Laid out everything. My debt, my income, my age, my prospects. She didn't sugarcoat it. It's in a bad position. But she helped me create a roadmap. Aggressive debt payoff. Downsizing. A small but consistent retirement contribution. Then I called my boss. I'd been at the same company for 28 years, and I'd never not once asked for a raise or promotion. I'd been so focused on just grinding out overtime that I'd never advocated for myself. I made an appointment and I went in with documentation of my work, my reliability, my skills. I got a raise. Not huge, but 15%. And my boss, somewhat embarrassed, admitted that he'd always assumed I was content because I'd never asked for more. Next, I looked at my living situation. The house was too big for me anyway, and the mortgage was crushing. I sold it, paid off what I owed, and moved into a smaller apartment. The equity wasn't much after the second mortgage, but it was something. A cushion. I started doing things I'd never done. I joined a gym, the cheap one at the community center, but still. I started cooking real meals for myself. I bought new work boots without waiting for the old ones to completely fall apart. Small things, but they felt revolutionary, and I stopped answering Marcus's calls every single time he rang. Not out of spite, but because I needed to establish that my time, my energy, my emotional bandwidth, they had value. They weren't infinite resources that existed solely for his consumption. He noticed. Of course he noticed. 3 months after my visit to Seattle, he called and he sounded worried. "Dad, is everything okay? You've been distant." "I'm fine, Marcus. Just busy." "Busy with what?" "With my life." There was a pause. Did I do something wrong? Could have unleashed everything then. Could have told him I'd overheard that conversation. Could have made him feel guilty and terrible. But that wasn't the point. The point wasn't to hurt him. It was to stop hurting myself. "No, son. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm reevaluating some things." We talked for a few more minutes, surface-level stuff, and then hung up. A month later, he called again. "Hey, Dad, I bought the condo." "That's great, Marcus. Congratulations. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Great view. You should come visit and see it. Maybe sometime. I'm pretty booked up with work right now." Another pause. "Dad, are you mad at me?" "No, Marcus, I'm not mad. Then, what's going on?" "You're being weird." I took a breath. "I'm just learning to prioritize myself a little more. That's all. I spent a lot of years making sure you had everything you needed, and I forgot to take care of myself. I'm fixing that now. But, I thought you were happy to help me. You always said I was happy to help you, and I don't regret it. But that chapter is over now, Marcus. You're a successful adult with a great career and a condo. You don't need me to sacrifice for you anymore. And I need to start building something for myself." The silence on the other end was long and uncomfortable. "So what does that mean?" he finally asked. "It means I'm going to focus on my retirement, my health, my life. It means I'm not going to be available every time you need something because I need to be available for myself. It means I love you. But I'm not going to disappear into the role of dad who gives everything anymore. I could hear him processing this. Is this because I asked about the down payment? Because I told you it was fine that you couldn't help? This isn't about the down payment, Marcus. This is about me realizing that I spent 32 years teaching you that my needs don't matter. And now I'm unteaching both of us that lesson. He didn't know what to say to that. Over the next year, things between us were strained. He'd call less frequently. When we did talk, there was a weird tension. He didn't know how to relate to me as a person rather than as a source of support. But I kept building my life. I started taking classes at the community college just for fun, just to learn. Woodworking, basic Spanish. Things I'd always been curious about but never had time for. I made friends, real friends, not just work acquaintances. People who knew me as David, not as Marcus's dad. I even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with a woman named Carol who worked at the library. It felt strange at first, prioritizing my own happiness, but gradually it started to feel right. Then, about 18 months after my trip to Seattle, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was different, shaky. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course. What's wrong?" "Jessica and I broke up. I'm sorry to hear that, son." "Yeah, it's been rough. Work has been really stressful. I got passed over for a promotion I thought was guaranteed, and I don't know. Everything feels harder than I thought it would be." I listened, and I've been thinking, he continued, about our conversation, about what you said, about prioritizing yourself. Okay, I was angry at first. I felt like you were punishing me, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized. He took a shaky breath. I realized I didn't actually know anything about your life, your interests, your dreams. I only knew you as my dad, as the person who supported me. And when you stopped doing that in the same way, I didn't know who you were. My throat tightened. I was talking to my therapist. Yeah, I started seeing a therapist and she asked me to describe you. And Dad, I couldn't do it. I could tell her what you did for me, but I couldn't tell her who you are, and that's really messed up. I'm 26 years old and I don't actually know my own father. Marcus, no, let me finish. I overheard something you said to Carol when I called last week and she answered your phone. You were laughing about something from your Spanish class? You sounded so happy, and I realized I'd never heard you laugh like that before, not once in my entire life. And that broke my heart, Dad, because what kind of son doesn't even know? What his father sounds like when he's happy? I was crying now, quiet tears running down my face. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and his voice cracked. I'm so sorry. For taking you for granted. For not seeing you as a whole person. For that conversation I had with my friend. Yeah, I know you heard it. You left the groceries on the counter and left 2 days early. I'm not stupid. I knew something happened. Marcus, you made choices for me, Dad, and they were good choices. They were loving choices. And instead of being grateful, I resented them because they made me feel obligated. But you know what I realized? You'd never actually asked for anything in return? Not once. You never held it over my head. You never demanded gratitude. I was the one who felt guilty, and instead of dealing with that guilt, I blamed you for making me feel it. I couldn't speak. I want to know you, he said. Not as my dad who sacrificed everything. Just as you, it's David. I want to know what makes you laugh and what you're learning in Spanish class, and who Carol is, and why you took up woodworking. I want to actually have a relationship with you, not just a transaction where you give and I take. I'd like that, I managed to say. Can I visit? Actually visit, not just expect you to entertain me. I want to see your life. Meet Carol. See your apartment. Maybe you could teach me some woodworking. I smiled through my tears. Yeah, son. I'd really like that. He came 3 weeks later. It was different. He asked questions. Real questions. About my childhood, my relationship with his mother, my dreams before he was born. We cooked together. He'd learned some recipes and wanted to show me. We went to my woodworking class, and he made a crooked little box that he was absurdly proud of. He met Carol. He was genuinely interested in her, not just polite, but actually curious about her life, her work, her perspective. On his last night, we sat on my small balcony, drinking beer and watching the sunset. I bought you something, he said, pulling out an envelope. I opened it. Inside was a check for $40,000. Marcus, I can't. It's not charity, Dad. It's not repayment. It's just, I got a bonus, and I want you to have this for your retirement. Not because you sacrificed for me, but because I love you, and I want you to be okay. You can refuse it if you want, but I'm hoping you won't. I looked at the check, then at my son. There's a condition, he added. What's that? You have to use some of it for something fun? Not just savings. Something that makes you happy. Deal. I laughed, really laughed. Deal. I deposited the check. I put most of it in retirement accounts. But I did use some for something fun. I booked a trip to Spain for me and Carol. 3 weeks. Hitting all the places I'd been reading about in Spanish class. Marcus and I talk every week now. Real conversations. He tells me about his life, and I tell him about mine. We're building something new, not the old dynamic where I was the giver and he was the taker. Something more balanced, more honest. Did I get revenge on my son for those words I overheard? Not in the traditional sense. I didn't punish him. I didn't make him suffer. But I did something more powerful. I reclaimed myself. I stopped being a martyr and started being a person. And in doing so, I forced him to see me differently, to value me differently, to actually know me. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so complete, so whole, so undeniably alive that people have no choice but to recognize your worth. I'm 60 now. I have savings. I have hobbies. I have a partner who makes me laugh. I have a son who calls to ask about my life, not just to update me on his. And I have something I didn't have before. Respect for myself. That conversation destroyed everything, yes, but it destroyed the parts that needed to die. It's a self-erasure, the martyrdom. The belief that my only value was in what I could provide for someone else. What rose from those ashes was better, stronger, more real. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever given so much that you disappeared, know that it's not too late. It's never too late to reclaim yourself. Sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself. Enough to exist is more than someone else's support system. Sometimes destruction is just another word for liberation, and sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay broken.